Hi, I'm Roxy. I'm an illustrator and I recently reviewed the new Rebelle 8 Pro software. There's a bunch of brand new Rebelle users now, so I thought it might be useful if I follow up with a quick beginner-friendly tutorial of the program. I'll show you how I customize it to make it feel more comfortable and to speed up my workflow. So jumping right in, when you first run Rebelle, you'll have this pop-up intro guide, which is quite useful, but you don't need to read it right now. You can close it, and when you're ready, you can always access it from Help, Intro Tutorial. Every time you open Rebelle, you'll get this pop-up asking you to create your canvas. Now, there's a couple of templates here, which you can choose from, or you can set a custom size up here. If I don't have a specific plan in mind, my default canvas is 4,000 pixels squared. I find that it's a good size for most things. Over here, you can select what kind of canvas you want. I typically go for a plain canvas, and I like to set the canvas color to off-white so that it's less blinding. If you're looking to do oil paints, you'll probably be more inclined to set it to a canvas. Or if you're doing watercolors, you might want a typical watercolor paper. But don't get too hung up on this though, because you can change it later. And there are no rules about what kind of paper you have to use for whatever medium. If you want to paint watercolors on a canvas instead of watercolor paper, you go right ahead and do that. You're the boss. So I'm just going to click OK. Here we are with our square 4,000 pixel canvas. If you want to change the canvas size now or at any point during the course of your paint, you can go ahead and go Edit Canvas Size. You'll get these handles that you can drag bigger or smaller and hit Enter to apply, or you can get these numerical values on the side where you can type it in the precise pixels right here and then click the little OK button. If you want to change the canvas type, at the bottom of your layers panel, you'll find this Select Canvas button. You can also change the texture scale. That's basically the size of the tooth of the paper. And I think deckled edges are on by default, but I always switch that off. And you can change the paper even mid-paint if you want. At any point of your painting, you can switch the paper up. So here's a sketch I did using the WK18 Kozo Bark Smooth. But if I decided, you know what, I want to change this to wood veneer and carry on painting, I can absolutely do that at any point. Also should mention, if you don't see the exact paper you want, go up here to filter and make sure not purchased is ticked. Then you'll get to see all the papers, even the ones you don't own. You can preview them and you can buy individual papers. If you're happy with your paper, you can just click the select canvas icon again to toggle it closed. Next, I want to show you the navigator up here. I personally prefer to have my navigator on this side. This tilt thing that's left behind is specifically for watercolors. You can set the angle and steepness of how the paper is tilted, which will determine how your paint runs. I seldom use watercolors, so I close this, but if I want it back, I can just go up to Windows, Tilt. But back to the navigator, you can see it's indicating that I'm looking at this painting zoomed out to 48%. If I click the magnifying glass, it sets it to 100%, and we get this little window showing which portion of the canvas we're looking at. If I click this icon, it fits the whole canvas to the screen size. You're not changing the canvas size here, you're just changing how zoomed into it you are. Over here, you can manually turn your paper just like you would in real life. You know, sometimes it's just easier to draw a certain curve from a certain angle. So you can do that here, and you can reset it straight by clicking this icon. You can also, if you don't want to use this, you can hold down R and then you'll see your cursor changes to rotate mode, and you can use your pen or mouse just to, you just grab it and rotate it. I'm too lazy to find R on my keyboard, so what I like to do is I set this button, the top button here on my stylus, to R, and so all I need to do is hold down that button, and then I can click on the canvas and swivel the canvas around with my pen, and when I release the button I'm back in paint mode. You can also flip your canvas here in the Navigator, which helps you see when things are going a bit wonky. There's something about seeing your painting from a different angle that suddenly opens your eyes and you notice things that you didn't see before. Like when you've got one eye higher than the other, or the chin that looks like it's melting. So it's good to check this frequently during the sketch stage, which is where, you know, your proportion comes together. A lot of traditional artists use mirrors for this exact purpose. The other thing you can do is click this to temporarily toggle your painting to grayscale. This helps you check if your values are good. Values meaning your lights and darks, how things are contrasted against other things. It's more difficult to notice value problems in color, so that's why you'd want to see your painting in grayscale every now and then. If you find yourself doing this frequently, there is a shortcut. Just press G to toggle grayscale on or off. And the last thing in the Navigator here is if you click this icon, you can view your painting at the size it's going to be printed at. You need to have calibrated your screen for this to be accurate. I did show how to do this in my Rebelle 8 review video, so I'll put a link in the description of this video with the timestamp of the exact point in the video where I demo this, just in case you missed that. So over here we have our brushes. They're separated into categories. We have oil and acrylics. This is your thick paint media. And within this category, we have different groups of brushes, and you can create your own groups like what I've done. If you want to know more about making your own brushes, that's outside of the scope of this tutorial, but I am currently doing a crash course right now for my patrons on brush creation within Rebelle. At this stage, it's article based, as if I'm documenting the procedure with examples, but I do plan on turning it into a proper video course later when I have time. But if you're not interested in making your own brushes, you can see we're on the first category alone, and there's tons of brushes and even more that you can download from places like Gumroad, so you're not going to run out of brushes. The next category is express oils. These share some of the same qualities as the oils, but it's not thick paint. Then we've got watercolors, for those of you that like the wet paints. Ink brushes, I actually think it's more accurate to describe them as ink wash brushes. They don't behave like the comic book brush pens. That's why I ended up creating my comic inking brush set as pencil brushes instead, which is our next category. I wouldn't actually say that this is strictly for pencils. Like I mentioned, I created the ink brushes in this category, and I have painting brushes under the pencils category as well. I feel like the pencil category describes like how most Photoshop brushes behave. There's no wateriness, no thickness or anything like that. They're just digital brushes. Then we've got pastels, chalk pastels, oil pastels, airbrushes. By the way, I have a free pack of airbrushes on Gumroad, link in description. And the last one is favorites and recent brushes. I haven't favorited anything yet, but let's say if we go back to my brushes, I can right click and favorite this, and it will appear here. Also, if I head on over to the recent tab, I can see the last few brushes I've used. Moving on to the color panel, we've got our color wheel here where we're choosing the hue. In the square, we can drag to the left to desaturate or drag to the right to saturate. If we drag down, we darken the paint. If we drag up, we lighten the paint. Underneath the color wheel, we have the RGB slider, but I actually like to set mine to HSV instead. I do that by selecting the hamburger menu, sliders, HSV. So instead of RGB, I'm seeing hue, saturation, and value instead. So the top slider is hue, basically the same as my color wheel. It's just in a line. The middle slider is saturation, so how gray or how saturated that color is. And the last one is value, how light or dark the color is. So the sliders basically mimic what I showed you on the color wheel, but you can be a little bit more precise because, you know, it's numeric. Let's say I wanted to keep this exact hue, but just wanted to bump up the saturation only. You can do that precisely here. We also have some quick color harmonies up here, so you can, you know, get the complementary color, meaning the exact opposite color, triadic color scheme, and so on. Underneath the sliders, we have some color swatches, which is nice if you want to work with a specific color palette. I like to set mine to oil pigments because I feel very fancy if I can pick, you know, burnt sienna instead of some random brown for peasants. If you want to select a color that's already on the painting, you can hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, which changes your cursor to an eyedropper tool. And if you click, it will pick up whatever color pixel is beneath it. What I like to do is I set the bottom button of my stylus to Alt, and that way I don't have to hold down Alt on the keyboard. I can just hold down this button instead. Additionally, to make it even more lazy, I go to Edit, Settings, Color. Don't need to confirm. This means that if I hold down Alt or this button, then I don't even need to click the canvas. As soon as I let go of the button, it picks up whatever color I'm hovering over. So I just hold the button, find the color I want, release over it, and then I get the new color. So I just hold the button, release, new color. Hold the button, release, new color. It's a small thing, but it's a quality of life that I really enjoy. Let's move on to the layers panel. You can see I have some layers here. I've kept my lines on a separate layer. The pattern on a shirt is on its own layer, and so on. And you can have as many as you like. You can choose to label them or not. No one's going to judge you. Actually, probably some people will judge you, but I won't. I got your back. So you can group the layers with folders. You can choose different blend modes for certain layers. Like, for example, on this blend layer, all I did was I duplicated the below layer. I set it to multiply, which makes everything darker. And then I erased everything that wasn't part of the shadows. By the way, I have a 31-part lesson series on blend modes for my patrons. You can also lock the transparency of a layer, which means that if you paint on it, you'll only be able to paint over what is already there. For example, if you have some shape like this, but you want to change the color of it, but you know you don't want to mess with the edges, then you select the layer it's on, toggle on lock transparency, and I can grab a different color and then paint over that layer with want and abandon, and it will only paint over those pixels that are already there. So those are the main panels, but there's three others that I like to have which aren't on by default. The first is the reference window. You open that window, reference images, and I like to slot that into the same panel as the navigator. Here's how I use it. I click here to import reference. Once I have a reference I want to use in there, I click on it and then click the eyeball icon to open it in its own window. And I can drag it here, and I don't need this anymore, so I can go back to the navigator. And while I'm working here, I can color pick from the reference image using the side of my stylus, which I mentioned before is set to Alt. I also have the time-lapse recorder, which you open window, record time-lapse. In this age of AI slop, wherever you look, it helps to have a time-lapse to prove that you actually painted it instead of using ChatGPT to just shart something out. So I slot that up here. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but when I glance over there, I can see if it's recording or not because the icon looks different. Then the last extra panel I have open most of the time is the brush creator, because I'm always creating and tweaking brushes. So window, brush creator. It's a big panel. So I often just leave it up here, minimized, and then I just expand it when I need it. Or if I do close it, I can easily recall it with a shortcut key, which is F5. So it's a toggle, so F5 to open, F5 to close it again. Now let's look at the actual painting process. Obviously, you first select whatever brush you want to use, and you select whatever color you want to load onto it. And you can start painting. But what if you want to blend paint together, or you want to erase? In other programs, you have separate tools for that, but the people who made Rebelle are clearly Vulcans with superior intellect and logic, because all of that stuff is built into every single brush as different modes that we can see in these icons right here. The first one is paint mode. So, you know, when we're in paint mode, we're painting, obviously. Let's slap down some paint. We'll skip the second one for now. I just want to show you the third one here is blend. So if I click this, we go into blend mode, and if I use it over here, there's no pixels, there's no paint there, so it does nothing. But when it comes into contact with paint, it starts to blend. Now let's go back to the second one. This is paint and blend. It's a hybrid mode that will paint if I press firmly, but it will blend if I press softly. And the last one is erase. So on this mode, it uses the same brush, but now it just removes paint. If you're working with oil brushes, there is one extra mode called paint and mix, which is similar to paint and blend. Each of these modes has a shortcut key. You press 1 for paint mode, 2 for paint and mix, 3 for paint and blend, 4 for blend mode, and 5 for eraser mode. So hitting 1 to 5 will toggle each of these modes, but you can also set them to use different keys if it makes more sense to you. For example, if you go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, Tools, and then scroll down to where you see the 1 to 5, you can change them here to whatever you want. Notice that I have changed my erase to C. That's just because C is my eraser toggle in other programs, so I just wanted to set them all the same so that when I click the button on my tablet, that it's the same for all of them. So the other thing is also, if you go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, Tools, Hold, which I'll explain in a bit, you'll see the 1 to 5 here as well. Again, you'll see my erase is set to C. So how the whole thing works is you can also access these modes temporarily by holding down the key instead of just pressing it. So let's say I'm in paint mode and I'm busy painting and I want to erase something. I don't have to click 5, or in my case C because I changed it, to erase. I can simply hold down C and it temporarily switches to the eraser mode. I can erase what I want and then let go of C, and then I'm back in paint mode. So you're just saving a click. It's faster, and once you get used to it, which won't take long, it feels more natural. Talking of keybinds, the other thing I like to change is edit keyboard shortcuts, select freehand selection. The default is Control-Shift-F, but I like to set mine to L, L for lasso. So if I press L while I'm painting, I can quickly select something, Control-T to transform it. I'm actually really hoping that Rebelle will combine some of these transform tools into one in the future, but whatever. I do what I want to do, and then Control-D to deselect. So all that to tell you that I set my lasso to L. The other keybinds I change, if we go to Layer, Select Previous Layer and Next Layer, I remove both of these shortcuts because for some reason I kept finding myself on the wrong layer, and I think I was accidentally activating these somehow. Since I removed them, I haven't had the problem. Now, if I am on the wrong layer, it's because I'm a dumbass. Then the very last thing I want to show you is actually the very most important thing, and that is setting the pressure curve. When you paint, if you feel like the pen isn't responding correctly to the amount of pressure you're applying, you're going to have this feeling of disconnectedness, like you're not really in control of the tool. So it's really important to take the time to adjust the pressure sensitivity so that it feels right for you. Within Rebelle, you can set the pressure sensitivity differently for every single brush you use, or you can kind of do an overall pressure sensitivity curve that will affect all the brushes. I don't do the latter. I like to go into the brush creator and tweak every single brush to exactly how I like it, but most people aren't like me. The simplest way is to set an overall pressure curve, so I'll show you how to do that. If we go to Edit, Preferences, Tablet, and scroll down to Pen Pressure Sensitivity, we have a little graph here, and this is how it looks by default. If you find that when you're painting, the brush applies too much paint too quickly, then you need to drag it to the right towards the firmer side. You maybe don't have to go all the way, maybe just a little bit, and you'll find that that's right for you. If the opposite is true, if you're finding that you have to press really hard to get any paint on the canvas, then you need to drag it to the left, to the softer side. If neither of these feel right, then you might be like me, and I set a custom curve on most brushes, something like this. So this shallow curve means that I have to press quite hard to get to full strength, but the steep bit means that when I do press hard, I go to full strength very quickly. For some reason, this just feels right for me, and so I highly recommend that you make the effort of setting the pressure curve, playing around with it until it feels natural for you, and then going through all of the brushes, trying them out. Just play and develop muscle memory, and you'll get to know the program and feel comfortable with it that way. That's all for now. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, hit up the comments. But thank you for watching. Much obliged if you leave a like and subscribe. Thank you also to my precious patrons. I appreciate you so much. Until the next one, God bless.